They knew armed men were gathering inside the state, plans were being written down, and names were being exchanged, and still, the system hesitated. What followed was not a sudden betrayal, but a failure that unfolded in plain sight. What makes the Catiline Conspiracy disturbing is not that it existed, but that it was allowed to mature. Multiple warnings reached the highest offices of power. Credible intelligence pointed to planned mass violence, political assassination, and coordinated uprisings across Italy. Yet no immediate arrests were made. No emergency powers were used until the plot was already operational. The danger was documented, debated, and delayed, and that delay nearly tore the Roman Republic apart. The people placed at risk were not abstract. They were senators, magistrates, creditors, ordinary citizens in Rome, and rural communities targeted for armed revolt. The intended victims included sitting officials and entire governing bodies. The method was coordinated terror, arson inside the city, synchronized murders, and external forces ready to march on Rome once chaos broke out. This was not a protest or a political disagreement. It was a planned internal war. Lucius Sergius Catiline did not emerge from nowhere. He was a known quantity long before the conspiracy became public. A patrician by birth, Catiline belonged to an old Roman family with declining prestige. He had served as a military officer under Sulla during the civil wars, where mass executions and property confiscations were normalized. Ancient sources record that Catiline personally participated in killings during the proscriptions, a period when violence was not only tolerated but rewarded. This shaped both his reputation and his network. He was known for a brutality, ambition, and a willingness to cross legal boundaries if power was the reward. Catiline pursued the consulship repeatedly and failed. These failures mattered. Roman politics was not forgiving to those who lost repeatedly, especially when paired with debt. By the time the conspiracy took shape, Catiline was deeply indebted. His associates were not idealists. Many were ruined aristocrats, veterans promised land but never rewarded, and young nobles excluded from advancement. Their shared grievance was exclusion from power and relief from debt. Their shared solution was force. The people endangered by this network were identified early. Cicero, as consul, received multiple warnings from informants embedded within Catiline's circle. One of the most critical sources was Fulvia, a noble woman whose lover was involved in the plot. She relayed details of assassination plans targeting Cicero himself. This was not rumor. Names, locations, and intended dates were provided. Cicero later documented these warnings in his speeches, and independent sources confirmed the existence of informants. Despite this intelligence, Catiline was not arrested immediately. He continued to attend Senate meetings, speak publicly, and recruit followers. This was not because the threat was unclear, but because Roman law restricted preemptive action. The Republic was built to prevent tyranny, and those safeguards became obstacles when dealing with internal terror. The Senate debated whether enough evidence existed to justify force. Meanwhile, the plot advanced. The first visible failure was procedural. Cicero invoked the Senatus Consultum, Ultimum, an emergency decree granting consuls broad authority to protect the state. Yet even with this decree, enforcement remained cautious. Surveillance increased, but arrests did not. Catiline, fully aware he was suspected, continued to maneuver. He even stood for the consulship again, while under suspicion of treason. The system allowed this contradiction. A man accused of planning mass violence was legally permitted to seek the highest office. The situation escalated when Catiline attempted to assassinate Cicero directly. According to multiple sources, armed men were dispatched to Cicero's residence under the pretense of a morning visit. The attempt failed because Cicero had been warned and increased his guard. This was not hearsay after the fact. Cicero addressed the Senate immediately afterward and accused Catiline openly, detailing the plot in front of witnesses. Catiline did not deny the accusations. Instead, he attacked Cicero's credibility and positioned himself as a victim of elite persecution. This confrontation exposed a deeper contradiction. The Senate now knew the threat was real. The conspirators were no longer hypothetical, yet Catiline was still not detained. He left the city voluntarily, claiming he was going into exile. In reality, he joined Manlius's armed camp. This was a critical missed opportunity, allowing the central figure to leave Rome and join an active military force turned a contained conspiracy into an open rebellion. Inside Rome, the investigation continued unevenly. Several conspirators remained in the city, including Publius Cornelius Lentulus Sura, a former consul. Lentulus held a powerful religious office and believed in prophecies predicting Rome's destruction and his own rise to power. His involvement demonstrates how institutional authority itself was compromised. Lentulus used his position to coordinate the plot from within the government. The decisive evidence came from an external mistake by the conspirators. Seeking military support, they contacted envoys from the Allobroges, a Gallic tribe with grievances against Rome. These envoys reported the approach to Roman authorities instead. Under Cicero's direction, a controlled sting operation was set up. The conspirators provided the envoys with letters outlining the plan, signed by key figures. This created rare physical evidence, written proof of intent, coordination, and leadership. The arrests that followed were sudden and severe. Lentulus and other conspirators were detained. Weapons caches were seized. Testimonies were extracted. The Republic now faced a legal crisis. The accused were Roman citizens of high status. Executing them without trial would violate established law. Releasing them risked renewed violence. The Senate debated their fate intensely. Cicero argued that the threat was ongoing and that execution was necessary. Julius Caesar, then a rising political figure, argued for life imprisonment, warning that summary execution would set a dangerous precedent. This debate exposed the core tension of the case, whether the Republic could survive by breaking its own rules. The Senate ultimately sided with Cicero. The conspirators were executed without formal trial. This decision ended the immediate threat in Rome, but created long-term consequences. Cicero was praised as the savior of the state, but the legal breach never disappeared. Years later, he would be exiled for ordering the executions. The system corrected itself, but only after the damage was done. Meanwhile, Catiline's external force was defeated militarily. He died in battle alongside his followers. His body was found among the front lines, confirming he fought rather than fled. This ended the armed phase of the conspiracy, but not the questions it raised. One unresolved issue is the extent of elite involvement. Ancient sources disagree on how many senators were complicit or sympathetic. Some names appear repeatedly in accusations, but were never charged. Political bias shaped the investigation. Cicero's enemies accused him of exaggeration. His allies framed the plot as existential. The truth likely lies between. The conspiracy was real, but its scale may have been selectively presented to justify extraordinary measures. Another unresolved question concerns intelligence handling. Cicero had informants early enough to prevent escalation. Why was decisive action delayed? Part of the answer lies in Roman legal culture, but part lies in political calculation. Arresting a patrician without overwhelming proof carried risks. Cicero chose surveillance over intervention until evidence was undeniable. That choice allowed the plot to mature. The Allobroges letters are often treated as the turning point, but they also reveal how close the conspiracy came to success. Without that betrayal, the Senate might never have had written proof. The Republic was saved not by institutional strength alone, but by chance cooperation from outsiders with no loyalty to Rome's internal politics. Public reaction was divided. Some hailed Cicero as a hero. Others saw the executions as judicial murder. Trust in the Senate was damaged. The idea that emergency powers could override citizen rights became normalized. Later figures, including future dictators, would cite the Catiline affair as precedent. What makes this case enduring is its structure. The threat was internal. The intelligence was available. The response was delayed by procedure, politics, and fear of precedent. When action finally came, it violated the very principles it claimed to defend. The Republic survived the conspiracy, but not unchanged. The Catiline Conspiracy exposes how systems designed to prevent abuse can fail when confronted with coordinated internal violence. It shows how hesitation can be as dangerous as overreaction, and it leaves an uncomfortable question. When the rules protect those who intend to destroy the system, which failure is worse, breaking the law or obeying it too long? Rome chose both at different moments. The consequences of that choice echoed long after the bodies were buried.